They told you that you were lazy, but no one ever asked what you were running from. No one paused long enough to wonder why your body felt so heavy, why your thoughts moved like fog through a cluttered forest. Laziness, they said, as if that single word could capture the depth of a human being disoriented in a world that has forgotten how to nourish the soul. But what if your stillness isn't idleness? What if your inaction is not a flaw, but a symptom of something deeper? What if, beneath the labels and the shame, there's a quiet truth waiting to be heard? You are not lazy. You are spiritually starving. In a society obsessed with productivity, we've turned rest into guilt and silence into failure. We celebrate the hustle. We condemn the pause. But as Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, the greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all. We rarely ask what a human being truly needs beyond economic output. We rarely pause to consider that a soul denied reflection and depth will eventually begin to suffocate. We label that suffocation as laziness because it's easier than asking what it actually means to be well. You might find yourself lying in bed, unable to move, not because you're weak, but because the world you're expected to function in feels emotionally and spiritually bankrupt. You're being asked to run a race with no finish line, for rewards that never satisfy. That's not laziness. That's exhaustion from disconnection. So instead of diagnosing yourself with failure, start asking what your soul has been denied. This is the beginning of your healing. This is how we begin to see ourselves, not as broken, but as misunderstood. And so, we begin our journey not with judgment, but with curiosity, because to understand what looks like laziness, we must descend beneath the surface and listen to what the silence is trying to say. There are kinds of hunger that no diet can satisfy, and there are wounds that leave no scars. This is the kind of suffering that hides behind functioning smiles and empty schedules, the kind that quietly whispers in the background of your life. Is this really all there is? We've learned to nourish the body, but we've forgotten how to feed the soul. Like plants starved of light, we reach toward anything that flickers. Dopamine, validation, constant motion, but still, we feel dry. Maslow's hierarchy of needs taught us that human life begins with survival. Food, shelter, safety. These are the basics, and for many, those boxes are checked. But what happens after survival? What happens when your outer needs are met, but your inner life remains untouched? We live in a paradox. Abundance surrounds us, yet we feel hollow, like ghosts drifting through a marketplace. We scroll through infinite content, chase digital praise, and drown ourselves in distractions, hoping that just one of them might finally fill the ache. But none do, because none can. Spiritual starvation is not always loud. It doesn't always scream for help. It can look like burnout, procrastination, numbness, can wear the face of success, while quietly eroding your sense of purpose. Can be masked by busyness, disguised by routine. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow, but in the absence of a why, even the smallest tasks begin to feel unbearable. Not because we lack strength, but because we lack a center. We lack an animating reason." This is not about laziness. It is about longing, a longing to feel alive, to feel seen, to feel that your life is more than a to-do list, that your being matters. So perhaps the real question isn't, why am I not motivated? But rather, what am I living for? And that question just might be the beginning of your return. We were raised in a world that taught us how to succeed, but not how to be whole. It showed us how to climb ladders, but never asked whether the ladders were leaning on the right walls. From a young age, we were told to strive, to compete, to chase the shimmering horizon of success. But no one warned us that success without meaning feels like standing on a mountaintop with no air. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, once wrote, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, They distract themselves with pleasure. And today, the world is full of distractions. It is easier to scroll than to sit with ourselves. Easier to chase likes than to chase truth. But deep inside, a quieter need begins to grow louder. The need for purpose. The modern mind is overfed and undernourished. We are drowning in information, but thirsting for wisdom, surrounded by noise, yet disconnected from self. We mistake momentum for meaning and equate being busy with being fulfilled. But movement without direction is just drifting. The meaning crisis is not a crisis of effort. It is a crisis of clarity. We've been taught to perform, not to align, to measure our lives in metrics, not in meaning. We've become fluent in multitasking, but foreign to introspection. And so, we call it laziness, when the soul rebels. But you are not lazy. You are resisting a narrative that doesn't fit. And that resistance is sacred, because only when we stop running on autopilot can we begin to ask the only question that truly matters. What makes this life worth living? And it is from that one question that a new chapter begins. In the age of algorithms and achievement, we are expected to function like machines, efficient, predictable, always online, always optimized. But we are not machines. We are stories. We are contradictions. We are breath and blood, not code and command. Still, the world treats you like a productivity app in human skin. Every day you're fed the same lie, that your worth is equal to your output, that exhaustion is a badge of honor, that if you're not grinding, you're falling behind. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, what are we racing toward? Nietzsche spoke of the last man, a being who has traded risk for comfort, curiosity for safety, meaning for mediocrity. He is not evil, just empty. And that is our risk, to become efficient shells who never touch the depth of our own lives. You scroll, you reply, you consume. But when was the last time you felt, not the dopamine hit of a notification, but the grounding presence of your own aliveness? We have become tools of our tools, just as Thoreau warned, slaves to systems we didn't create, chasing dreams that were never truly ours. The algorithm doesn't care if you're fulfilled. It only wants you engaged. Click, scroll, consume, repeat. And when your spirit resists, when it shuts down, when it refuses, we call it laziness. But maybe it's not laziness. Maybe it's wisdom. Maybe it's the sacred part of you saying, I am not built for this pace. I am not designed for this disconnection. You were not meant to be optimized. You were meant to be alive. There is a voice within you, one that doesn't speak in words, but in tension, in unease, in longing. It flickers in your chest when something feels off. It stirs in your stomach when your actions betray your values. But we've learned to ignore it. We override it with productivity, with noise, with numbness. Carl Jung called this voice the self, the deeper, unconscious center of your being, always trying to guide you toward wholeness. But most of us don't live from the self. We live from the ego, from the persona, the mask, the version of us we show the world, to stay safe, to be liked, to be normal. And when that inner voice begins to grow louder, when the mask starts to suffocate, it doesn't always sound poetic. Sometimes sounds like burnout. Sometimes like, I can't do this anymore. Sometimes it feels like laziness, like apathy, like emptiness. But maybe that's not the absence of desire. Maybe it's your soul, refusing to play a role it no longer believes in. Jung wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So many of us are being directed by stories we never wrote, scripts handed to us by culture, by parents, by fear. But the moment you begin to listen, truly listen, something shifts. That inner voice is not here to destroy your life. It's here to reclaim it. It's not asking you to burn everything down. It's asking you to come back, to what is real, to stop performing and start becoming. So if you feel lost, disoriented, tired of pretending, that's not failure. That is the beginning of remembering. We live in a culture that values the visible over the invisible, tangible results over silent growth, performance over presence. From social media to corporate ladders, we're applauded for what we produce, not for who we are. So we learn to perform. We put on the smile. We check the boxes. We meet the expectations. But in the quiet of our own minds, we begin to feel like imposters, playing a role we never auditioned for. Every achievement becomes another mask, another layer, distancing us from the part of us that just wants to rest, to breathe, to exist, without needing to prove. But the cost of this performance is staggering. As Carl Rogers, the father of humanistic psychology, once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." Yet we are never taught self-acceptance, only self-optimization. We are praised when we push through, when we show up, even though we're falling apart. But what if that isn't strength? What if real strength is choosing to feel, choosing to slow down, choosing to ask, why am I doing any of this? Our culture doesn't celebrate slowness, contemplation, or emotional depth. And so, when your soul hungers for those things, it gets labeled as laziness. But it isn't. It's wisdom. It's your inner compass, pointing away from shallow approval and towards something more enduring. You don't need another productivity hack. You need permission to be, to question, to rest, to matter. Without performance, you were not born to be a brand. You are not a product. You are a presence, a becoming. And sometimes, the greatest rebellion is refusing to perform a life that isn't yours. If you've ever tried to break free from burnout, you've likely noticed something. Healing doesn't follow a straight path. Some days you rise with clarity, with intention, with strength that surprises even you. Other days, you sink back into the same old fog, the same heaviness, the same stillness that feels like a step back. But this isn't failure. It's being human. Modern society trains us to think in straight lines, cause and effect, input and output, progress as a staircase. But emotional healing, soul nourishment, psychological integration, they don't work that way. They move in spirals, in seasons, like tides, like weather. And yet, when the fog returns, when the motivation vanishes, we shame ourselves. "I thought I was past this," we whisper. But Carl Jung would remind us, what we resist persists, and what we accept transforms. True healing isn't about never getting lost. It's about learning to walk with your shadows rather than against them. It's about knowing that spiritual hunger comes in waves, and every time it returns, it's not pulling you backward. It's inviting you deeper. Laziness in this light is often the body's last attempt to speak, to say, "You've gone too far. You've ignored the signs." It's not a defect. It's a pause, a sacred one. So give yourself space to ebb and flow, to return to yourself, not with pressure, but with compassion, to reconnect to the practices that ground you, not as chores, but as rituals of becoming. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are unfolding in your own time, in your own rhythm, and that unfolding is the quiet, holy art of becoming whole. At some point, the hunger within you will become too loud to ignore. You'll realize that no amount of praise, productivity, or digital applause can ever fill the space inside that longs to feel truly alive. And that's when the real choice begins. Keep performing for the world, or begin listening to your soul. Most people choose approval because it's safer, it's familiar, it's rewarded. But approval, without authenticity, is a slow death, a quiet kind of disappearance, a living ghost chasing validation in rooms that don't even see you. To choose aliveness is to choose risk, is to step off the stage, and walk into yourself. It means disappointing others so you can stop betraying yourself. It means letting go of the version of you that makes everyone else comfortable so you can finally become the version that makes you feel free. This is what Camus called revolt. Not rebellion against the world, but rebellion for your own soul. The refusal to live a life that's not truly your own. So if you've ever been called lazy, if you've worn that label like shame, if you've believed it yourself, let it go. It was never laziness. It was longing. It was your soul trying to speak. You were never meant to be efficient. You were meant to be real. So choose the harder path, the honest one. Choose depth over comfort, meaning over momentum. Choose to be alive, even if it means being misunderstood. Because in the end, it's not the world's applause that makes you whole. It's your own returning. And if this voice found you in a moment of quiet, if something here stirred a truth in you, then don't let it be another forgotten thought. Like, comment, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't, and keep walking with us. Because this isn't just a video. It's a mirror, a reminder, a quiet rebellion. And your presence here means you're already on your way back to yourself.